So yeah, let's jump into that interview, man. I did enjoy it, to be honest with you. There's not too many interviews with Eric Davis, to be honest with you. What was your, like, when you walked away, right, and Eric Davis went right and y'all went left, what was like the first thought y'all had? Like, I'm sure there was like, oh, remember he said that, like, what was some of the things y'all were like excited that he had mentioned?
Yeah, there was definitely like hooting and hollering and high fives, and like we couldn't believe that had just happened. It was pretty amazing.
Now, before we get to his answer, I wanted to give you guys a short little preview of what that interview was like. Again, I'll put a link in the description.
If you were asked to appear before Congress under oath, would you willingly do that?
The only way I'll testify, actually, the reality is in a classified setting. DOD can come after me. What happened to Dave Grush? Physically harassed at his home and in his vehicles after he filed his whistleblower complaint. It was before he ever testified. All I had was the stuff that I accumulated and gathered going up through the OSAP and ATIP. And that's how I met Dave Grush. Right. Jay Stratton introduced me to Dave. He was the NRO liaison officer to the UAPTF. So anyway, I met both of them, and I gave Dave all my data, all my briefing information, and he took that, ran with it, and he found everything. George Bush, when he was the CIA director, he was given some pretty spectacular information about a major UAP event took place in the early 60s, and Bush's eyes lit up, and this is what he told me. He said, "What are you talking about?" The Pentagon liaison officer told him all about it. He said, "Are you kidding me? There's a there?" Yeah. And he said, absolutely. And he said, well, I want to see the evidence. And the evidence was in the form of documentation, but the film was the primary thing.
We are thrilled to announce this special episode of American Alchemy featuring a groundbreaking interview with the legendary Eric Davis. Eric is a renowned scientist, Hal Puthoff's protege, and probably more of an expert in UFO propulsion and exotic physics principles than just about anybody on Earth. He's written a fantastic book called The Frontiers of Propulsion Science, which is as comprehensive of an overview as you could possibly get when it comes to exotic propulsion and anomalies in topological physics. He's also written all sorts of great research papers on subjects ranging from UAP tracking to quantum teleportation.
What jumped out at me was the raw conversation about talking to HW, because somewhere back in the record in an interview somewhere, he had mentioned that he talked to HW Bush about the existence of the program. But the detail that HW got read in sort of by accident by his DOD liaison officer, who thought that CIA already read him in the process of being selected as director, and the fact that he was not told about it again later when he became president, that lends credence to a lot of theories that presidents are not told, or they're told as little as possible. And on that note, what will serve as a really great like appendix to the Davis interview that we did is when the Davis and Kirk McConnell videos go up from Seoul, where they appeared together on stage. That will be really good because there's some complimentary questions that were asked of Kirk McConnell and of Davis while they were on stage. And I wrote a couple of questions that other interviewers took up to the stage to ask about different things. And one of those being this question of how much are presidents told. And I think what McConnell said was, essentially, if there's like an issue, if there's an event, if there's something that requires executive level decision making, that's the degree to which they will inform the office of the president. But what's really you can kind of think about is like, who decides what that threshold is? Like, who decides that you need the president to decide on something? I mean, sure. What if the thing that's happening is by virtue of some shit you just did that was real shady? As in program leaders, as in gatekeepers or whatever. You're going to go tell the president there was a shootout because you shot down a UFO and there's 6 dead guys. You know what I mean? Like, they're going to be incentivized in that situation to not break the seal on telling the president for the first time if some shit goes really sideways. So that was really revelatory as well. He stated a couple of interesting things about, so a really contentious thing that Davis has said that people like really vehemently disagree with is there are no ARVs, right? That's the thing that stands really far apart from the claims of somebody like Stephen Greer. And we pulled that apart a bit. And I don't think he was just lying to our faces. I just don't think so. Granted, there are scenarios where maybe you are told a cover story to disseminate when you're asked. Totally possible. But there are so many other ways that could not be true, but he was still told it, right? Either the guy they talked to was misinformed and told them that, or the guy like he didn't know. Like, it's supposedly so well compartmented that some program manager at Lockheed Martin is not going to know if they've got ARVs at SAIC or if they've got them at Boeing. Like, he's not going to know that. So there are lots of ways that could have been in error, without necessarily saying that he was being untruthful to us or that he's being untruthful about it. And that's where I picked at two things. And I said, number one, what about in the last 15 years? What if there was some breakthrough in the, since OSAP, since you last looked into this? Is that possible? And he kind of gave and said, yeah, technically, since I was last read in, I don't know shit. There was that. And I said, what about the adversary? Could they have something? Could they have made some breakthrough? And I didn't find his answer all that satisfactory to me, because he said, why are we still a country? Well, China could have a rudimentary prototypical command of FTL drones, and it wouldn't necessarily mean that they can just zero us. Like, they could still get counterstruck, like you can still get nuked, even if you can like take out 6 carriers without retribution, you can still get nuked. So that doesn't follow to me. That they must not have it because why haven't they preemptively attacked us? I don't buy that. So
that's fair.
I do think they could have it. And I've said things to some of these, people like Carl Nell and Chris Mellon and Lou and others. I've said things to them at these events. I'm concerned that some of the adversary, some of the close calls with Graves and other U.S. air assets that are known, they have the technological capability of alien technology, but they have the disposition of a prosaic adversary, and they behave like a human adversary. So that gives me pause that they have something in some prototypical degree of development. And I've said that to those kinds of people, and they've basically nodded along and said, yeah, I have the same concern. Not that they know that to be the case. They haven't disclosed that, but that they have the same concern. So that was one of the big topics with Davis, is that he acknowledged that as of the end of the Cold War, we knew the Russians had multiple crash retrievals. And he even says in that interview that he was made privy to knowledge that the Chinese had at least one crash retrieval. I have no idea how this is all unclassified. I have no idea how he was able to sit there and say this at that lunch. No clue whatsoever. Doesn't track. But who knows? Classification is funny like that. Like, if there was a report that somebody wrote all this down in and they marked it unclassified, you can talk about it. As crazy as that sounds, even if somewhere else it was governed under classification, if the government allowed this material to be written down somewhere in a government document that was not marked classified secret or classified top secret, then that allows this kind of conversation. So my only assumption is at some point somebody slipped and did exactly that kind of thing.
Wow, what a loophole that is. Jesus Christ, what's the point? Okay, yeah, that's kind of a crazy loophole.